You have produced and hosted actually a couple of podcasts as well, Actorcast and Relate. When did you start wanting to have a podcast along with everything else that is going on? When did the idea come to mind? And how did it come to mind? And what was your initial experience? And the first episode, when you wanted to produce and actually record the first episode, and what did you think might happen? I'm asking a lot of questions all at once, but we can just talk about the whole experience, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Creating the podcast, and Relate was the first one that I did. And it actually, when I first started it, it had a different name completely as well. And then I sort of rebranded it. But it actually goes along what I was just discussing with the musical a bit, where I was straddling these two worlds of, okay, tech, this is my tech work, this is my acting work. And I thought having the opportunity to create a show, to create a podcast, and to be able to have in-depth conversations was a really great opportunity to not only educate myself, but to also share those conversations with anyone who may be interested in listening. And so Relate was specifically about the importance of human relationships in the digital age. And so it was very related to other things that I was doing within the creative arts. And so that was kind of the impetus for starting the podcast. And I had all sorts of incredible guests on the show. But as I mentioned earlier, it was certainly a learning act. I was learning as I was doing it, learning how to produce it, edit it, release it for the world to listen to. You understand completely. It's certainly a process. There's a lot of steps being put into place. But I will say what was great about it was a lot of things, primarily two things that come to mind at the moment. One is that in an age where we are getting information in bite sizes, just like quick fixes. And I started the podcast too before TikTok was really big and before short form videos started to become very popular back in, because that really started, I guess TikTok had been around before 2020, but it started to become really popular in 2020. And so that was something. It's like, okay, I'm creating a platform where we're having real, deep, meaningful conversations. But then two, and I'm sure you will be seeing this with your podcast if you haven't already been seeing it, is that it gives you the opportunity to connect with really cool people.
That's right.
Everyone loves the opportunity to be able to talk about their work and things that they're passionate about. So if you reach out to someone and you're like, hey, I would love to have you on my podcast, that gives them a lot more incentive to connect with you than if you were just saying, hey, I love your work. Can we connect? Because people are busy. People are always running around doing a million different things. So that's something that I also really enjoyed, is that it gave me the opportunity to connect with people, to meet new people that I might not have met otherwise. And so I got to connect with a bunch of different people, specifically for Relate in the tech industry. Also, I had a lot of people in the entertainment industry as well, talking about their experiences. And so Relate ended up being 200 episodes. Once I was about 100 episodes in, I realized that the podcast kind of became two different shows in one, because I would have a lot of entertainment professionals on the show and we would go into, okay, what was your career like? What was your experience like as an actor, or a director, a casting director? And those episodes ended up being quite different from some of the other episodes I was having of talking with people in the tech industry, the wellness industry. And those conversations were kind of more tailored to the central idea of the show being about, okay, what's the importance of human relationships in the digital age? So that's what was the impetus for me creating my next podcast, Actorcast, where it was specifically talking with people in the entertainment industry as a means to help other actors. Because you might feel the same way. I still feel this in a lot of ways, and I've been working in the industry for some time now, that it's so mysterious. So it's so difficult sometimes to figure out how things work in this industry. And because there's no straight line to success, it's this zigzag. Everyone has a different journey of finding success in this industry. So because of that, it makes it very confusing. And so I wanted to the best of my ability, bring guests on the show and be able to clear up some of this confusion that I was having, but then also that hopefully I'd be able to help with our listeners as well. So I really enjoyed doing Actorcast. I ended up doing Actorcast for 100 episodes before I decided to end the show. And so that was kind of the impetus behind creating both of those shows.
How do you stay motivated and such vibrant personality all the time? Do you have like any rituals, any like secrets that you can share with us that keeps you always professional, upbeat, motivated, on top of his game?
I appreciate that. I can't say that I'm always on top of my game. Looks can be deceiving. What I will say, there are a couple of things here. One is that having an understanding of the long game of what you're doing, at least for me, helps a lot. It also helps me enjoy it more. So when I was doing a podcast interview, I was not looking forward to editing it. Editing, it takes so much time, and it could be very tedious sometimes as well. But when I had the perspective of, oh, I'm getting the opportunity to interview this person, and then once it's all finished, I'm going to be able to share that with people, that gets me more excited about being able to sit down and have a conversation. Or in much the same way, if it's something else I'm working on, like the musical or another project. And so that's one aspect, is having the perspective. I'm always trying to think of, okay, my future self will thank me if I do this now. Like, what can I do now, even though it might be tedious, even though it might be annoying, even though I may not feel up to it at this moment, will my future self thank me if I do it? And so having that perspective helps a lot. The second thing I would say is self-care is incredibly important. 100%. I would not be able to do what I do if I didn't take care of myself first. So prioritizing sleep, prioritizing eating well, working out. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect 24/7 on those things. I definitely have days where I stay up later, or maybe there's a workout that I miss or something like that. But overall, being able to remain mostly consistent on those items gives me the fuel and the energy to then be able to do the work that I need to do. And I think sometimes as artists, it's very tempting to sacrifice our self-care because we are like, okay, I'm going to put my needs aside because I need to go all out in this one thing that I'm working on, or maybe this specific job that I'm doing. And I get where that mentality comes from. But in my opinion, if you don't take care of yourself first, then you're not able to put your best foot forward for when you are in those job situations or those situations that might be a little bit more hectic. And I know that in a lot of ways you feel the same way. We've had conversations about the importance of self-care and why that's so essential, especially as actors. And so that's why what I would say keeps me going for sure. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I certainly have my days where I don't want to do anything. And that's its own form of self-care in a lot of ways as well. But yeah, I think having that perspective helps big time.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. This is our instrument. We have to take care of it.
Yes.
Right? As actors, artists, that's all we got. We have to, well, in the industry, the word is the product and the instrument as students of acting. So we have to take care of that first Not to mention, as a human being, you want to take care of yourself as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the older you get too, and we're really not that old, but I feel like now I have this, as with every year that goes by, I have a deeper perspective on, okay, what's worth pushing the boundaries for myself, so that has also helped.
Let me ask you this. Now that you mentioned the word boundaries, well, in every journey, especially in our journey, that is not, the end is not clear. This is like a journey of faith and passion that we are all on. We all faced with some setbacks, reject a lot of rejections, outrageous rejections sometimes, and like roadblocks and all that. So how, I'm sure it had happened to you multiple times as well. How did you, and how do you face them? How do you treat them? What do you tell yourself? What is your mindset around those setbacks?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, with each audition, if we're speaking audition specifically, it's that, hey, I'm just going to put my best foot out there, see how it's received, and then forget about it. Try not to dwell on it too much. I think when it comes to that, that helps me a lot. And also divorcing my self-worth as an artist from if I get an audition or if I get a callback or if I get a job. Because having the opportunity to create my own projects as an artist is of great interest and of importance to me. And it's auditioning is just part of what it means to be an actor. It's having the opportunity to play other people in other roles in projects that you audition for specifically. I see it as a part of being an actor. I think some people fall into the trap of seeing it as the whole thing. As, okay, if I'm not auditioning, if I'm not getting callbacks, if I'm not getting booked on roles, am I really an actor? Can I call myself an actor if I'm not getting booked? My philosophy is yes, 100%, because that's like saying, if you're a painter, for example, that if you paint something and you are trying to sell it, but no one buys it, no one wants to hang it in their dining room, that you're not a real painter. Well, you just painted a painting, so that makes you a painter. As an actor, you just performed a character. If it was just an audition, or if you're performing a monologue by yourself in your room, you're creating something in that moment. And so having that perspective, I think, really helps a lot with regards to the rejection that you face. I think sometimes this is always a constant reminder for myself, is that everyone is on their own journey. To go back to the conversation with social media, I think sometimes it's easy to compare ourselves to others working in the industry, friends of ours, and seeing, oh, well, this person is getting booked for A, B, C, and D. Why isn't this happening for me? Like, it's so easy and so tempting to go down that route. So I think it's so important to always just have the perspective, hey, this person's on their journey, you're on this journey, you're on your own path. That helps a lot when you just have that opportunity to center yourself. I also think that having a reason why you're an actor is so important and so essential.
Can you
Because, yeah,
elaborate on that? Because that was a very good point that you brought up.
yeah,
Why? the reason
Yes.
why.
So for myself, I could really only speak for myself, but the reason I'm an actor is because having the ability to empathize and connect and understand, one, who the character that you're playing, what they're going through, having a deep understanding of another person who's not you, but then two, being able to connect with someone in a very real scenario, even though it's imaginary. As Meisner says, living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. That's that living truthfully moment. I believe that we are potentially heading towards this epidemic in some ways where people don't really know how to connect and interact with people. I think that everybody should take an acting class for that reason.
Yes.
And so for me, as the world advances, as technology advances specifically, I feel like it's my duty to have a comprehensive and deep understanding of how human psychology and human beings interact and relate to one another so that we can come together, empathize with one another, and build like a better world. And what better way to do that than to actually step into the shoes of someone else who's very different from yourself? And I know that that might sound like too big, but that's why I'm an actor, is because it allows me to connect with others. It allows me to be present with others in a world where a lot of times people aren't very present. And so I think it's important for actors to have a reason why they're pursuing the craft. You hear it all the time that so many well-known and established actors will say, "Hey, if you're in this industry to be rich and famous, you're going to be disappointed." And I think that there is some truth to that, because who knows how this industry works, in all honesty. I feel like people who are even successful have multiple Oscars and Emmys. They're like, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how I got here. And so I would 100% agree with that. Sometimes what I don't agree with, though, is that sometimes people will say, if you could do anything else in the world besides acting, do that. Don't be an actor, because it's very tough. It's a difficult life, and you just have to be like 100% committed to it. I don't agree with that, because on two ways. I think that's some actors' way of putting themselves up on a pedestal, of being like, if you could do anything else, do it. But I myself, I was brave enough to do this. And so I feel like sometimes people put themselves, it's like this battle of who has struggled the most with it. And in addition to that, acting, being an actor, is only part of what someone's identity is. I don't think that it's beneficial for actors to see themselves as just actors. People see themselves as husbands, as fathers, as mothers, as wives, so daughter, son. Maybe they are also doing another career at the same time that they're perhaps very passionate about. Maybe they volunteered their time with a nonprofit that they care deeply about. And so when it comes to advice around being an actor, I think there's this, I think it's important to like make sure that those getting involved understand that, okay, this isn't like being a lawyer or a doctor. It's a very different type of profession. So it's important to have that sort of awareness. But to tie your whole self-worth and identity to being an actor, I don't think serves anybody, because it's all of our other experiences, I think, that inform our work as an actor. So if you don't have those other external life experiences, it's going to make being an actor much more difficult, I think.
So true.
So yeah, I know that's kind of a bit of a tangent, but I think having that sort of perspective is so important as you're going out and auditioning and facing rejection after rejection after rejection, is that don't tie those rejections to your identity and your identity as an artist as well.
So true. You touched on some very important things that are all true. I really appreciate your time. I loved our conversation, and I would love to have more conversations in the future. Hopefully, if you're up for it. Before we finish this episode, I'm going to give you some sentences that I would love for you to finish them.
Oh, all right.
The craziest audition I ever had was when I...
oh,
You're
that's
going to finish.
Yeah, this was one of my really first... I guess I just need to finish the sentence. I went in for the audition. I started talking, and literally 2 seconds after I started, the person who was auditioning, she was like, whoa, 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 oh my gosh. She's like, you're too loud. You're too loud. She's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, I'm sorry. She's like, do you know what you're auditioning for? I'm like, yeah. She's like, just don't be loud. When I look back at that moment, one, I probably didn't know what I was doing, but two, I don't know if the casting director knew what she was doing either. Now that I think back on it, so that's the first one that comes to mind.
Okay, great. All the first ones that come to mind are the most precious ones. So yeah. Tell me this: if I could relive one moment from my early career, it would be when I...
Ooh, that's a good question.
If I could relive one moment from my early career, it would be when I
might say, even though I guess I was technically in school, so I don't know if you could count this as my career yet, but I would say that memory that I shared earlier of like the very first play that I worked on, where I didn't have any lines, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was backstage opening night, and just that first experience was so visceral, here in the audience, with behind the curtain, and we're about to go on, because I think about that feeling, and that really changed the course of my life 100%. And so being able to go back and relive that, or maybe even watch that moment from like the outside, I think would be really cool.
If I could write a musical about my journey, the title would be...
That's a good question. About my journey. Maybe discovering my artist. Discovering the artist in me, I guess.
Great.
What I want to say.
Then you can rebrand it later.
Discovering the artist within.
I love it. The artist within.
Yes.
If there is one thing I've learned from my journey so far, it's that
this career is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Love it. The moment I knew I wanted to be a multidisciplinary artist was when I
had to be.
I had no other choice.
Yeah, exactly. When I was like, I can't pay someone to do this, so I guess I'm going to do it.
I create my own table when I don't find a chair. One of the biggest failures happened when one of my biggest failures happened when I...
Like any good failures, it was during an audition. It was an audition. I still think about it. It was an audition for a really great opportunity, and I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. it was very early, or, it was earlier in my career, I should say. And so, not that I'm giving myself an excuse, but I was at a point where I didn't quite understand yet the rules and how things work in an audition scenario. And so because of that, I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. So I would say that.
When I launched my first podcast, I was nervous that
I would say I was nervous that I wouldn't, or that it wouldn't be interesting. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough. Patrick, lovely having you on the show. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very grateful and hope to see you next time.
Yeah, Sheida, thank you so much. Congratulations on this podcast. Very excited for it. Looking forward to hearing the other episodes. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you.